Hey guys, welcome back to the series on how to make a virus. So in this episode 2, we're going to just be figuring out what to do with the commands. So if I just quickly show you guys where we left off here. We had whoops, I ran the wrong one. We had the client and the server, and basically you could just send commands over to the whoops. You could just send commands over to the client. Those are the same length. That's pretty cool. But the problem is we don't know what to do with the commands, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So what we're just going to do is right click our clients and add a new folder, and we're just going to call this folder commands, and we're going to add two things to this folder: command.cs, command handler.cs. And I'm just going to, you don't have to do this, I'm just going to format this to my preference, as I usually do, as I always do. And we'll start with making the command. So first I'll explain what the command.cs is. And this is basically the structure for every single command we're going to make. Every command we're going to make is going to inherit this class, and it's just going to use all the variables and functions we add in this class. Now, when we're making this, we're going to have to consider what is a command. So a command is in this format: name and then the arguments. And it could be like multiple arguments. So I'll show you, for example. In this episode, one of the commands I'm gonna make is a beep command, and you're gonna easily be able, if you pay attention, you're gonna easily be able to make your own commands. So don't worry. So the name of the command is beep, and it's only gonna have one argument, and it's gonna be an optional argument because you don't need arguments for every command. But the optional argument is how many times do you want it to beep. So 5, for instance. And this right here would be the arguments, and this is the name. So the first thing we're going to do is add that string name, and then we're going to make it so you could just add in the constructor and just set it there. The next thing you're going to do, every single command has a functionality, so that's why we're going to make a public virtual string execute, and this is where we're going to implement the array args. Those are the arguments right there. We're going to store it in a string array. And we're not going to put anything here except we have to put return and then just an empty string because it wouldn't compile because this is string. I'll show you. Look, not all code paths return a value. So you have to do that. You have to do that or else it won't compile. And since these are both one-line methods, we might as well just close them up there. So yeah, this is it. This is really basic. I hope you understood the point of this class. And now let's quickly, or not quickly, but let's work on the command handler. So what's the command handler? This is going to be where we store our commands, and it's going to help us handle the commands and easily run them. So we're going to store commands in a list, and if you remember, we imported that list from system.collections.generic. And we're going to make that list right here. List command. And we'll go ahead and say this dot commands is a new empty list. And for every command we're going to make, I'll show you guys in a bit, but this is where you would put it. You would say this dot commands dot add new command, whatever your command's called. And actually, that's it for now. I'll just open it up. But a function I'm going to add here is public void or string run command, string command that we're going to run. And what we're going to do is split the string by its spaces. So if you remember, we had this command, beep5. And what we're doing by splitting it by its spaces is we're finding all the instances of spaces, and then we're splitting it to add it to array. So to make that easy to understand, I'll add a few more parameters, a few more arguments. So after doing this, to this string, for example, beep would be the first instance in the array, 5 would be the second parameter, 1 would be the third parameter, 2 would be the fourth. Because we're splitting it by the spaces. And if that's not easy enough to understand, say that we're splitting it by a different character, a dot. If I put a dot here, this right here would be the first entry in this array, and this right here would be the second. We are going to split it by spaces, and that's the command. Now get the name. I'm going to go ahead and import system.link because it's going to provide some useful functions. Just allow us to get the first out of this array. Obviously, we could do that just like this, but I prefer this. And it's going to return this, which is the name. The name is beep. And now to get the arguments, we're going to have to skip over the first entry and then get all the other ones. The way we're going to do that, well, I said we're going to skip over it. So string array, the arguments are sp.skip, and just skip the first entry. And then that will give us all of these, but it's going to skip this one. Skip the first one. And we're getting this from links. So if you ever want to use this, you can get it from if you import system.link. And I highly recommend you learn system.link. It's very, 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 very useful, and it has a really good name for itself. Everyone, honestly, if you use link, people are gonna respect your code a lot more. It's pretty crazy. Alright. And then what we're gonna do is loop through every single command. We haven't added any commands yet, but we're going to add some in the future. So we're going to say for every command C in our list we made up here, in this dot commands, or you could just say just commands, but I prefer to do that. And we're going to go ahead and say if C is if the command name is equal, if the command name .toLower is equal to name.toLower, actually we don't have to do that because it's going to be lower by default. Then we're going to go ahead and execute the command and break. Now what am I doing here? So again, for each So for every single command in our command list, which we don't have any yet, but we're going to add some this episode, we check if that command name is equal to the name that the command is. So, for example, we have this command, and then we're checking if the name is okay. It's going to make more sense when we actually go ahead and make the command. So I'll wait for that. But this is pretty straightforward. We're just checking if the name is equal to the command name, and if it is, then run the command with the args. Almost forgot about that. And we're going to return that. And we actually don't need these curly braces. Okay. Yeah, I actually like this. This is pretty neat. So let's go ahead and make the beep command. And so as I said earlier, the beep command is every single command is going to inherit this class. So what we're going to do, in order to make that happen, we're going to add a colon here and put command here. Now, this class inherits this class, which is this. Now, what does this do? This gives us access. Let me just add this back for a second, just to show you guys. This dot name. As you can see, we now have a name, a public string name, even though we didn't add it here. We added it right here. This dot execute, right? And it also gives us access to this constructor. And I'll show you guys exactly how to do that. Public beep, and then string name. And then to get the constructor, we add the colon again, and we type base name. And there you go. That's how you. And base is just referring to the whatever you're inheriting. And now, this is where we add the functionality of the command. So public void, or public override string. And there you go. As you can see, it's automatically filling in. The only thing is we're not going to do this time. And we're using override because we're overriding our parent. This is our parent because we're inheriting it. Our parent's method of executing. That's old. If I build this, that'll go away, but it'll come here. Anyway. So I'll bring this back, B5, and get rid of this. B5. Actually, we already got rid of the name here. So the arguments are just going to be 5 now. That's what's in here. It's just going to be one string with 5. So what we're going to do, but there also could be no arguments if we just want to beep once. So what we're going to do is say if the args dot length are none, then console.beep and then return and then we don't have a response. I will show you guys a command with a response, but we don't have a response, so we're just going to return nothing. They're just an empty string. Now we're going to check if that's not the case, then check the args.length are 1. And if they are, then what we're going to do is beep multiple times. Now the way we're going to do that is say int I equals 0, while I is not equal to int 32.parse args. I'm going to add import link again. First, console.beep, and then we're going to increase I by 1. So what am I doing here? So we've distinguished that if the arguments.length is 1, it's going to be a number, like 5. And then if it is, what we're going to do, I'm just making an integer right here, and I'm checking while that integer is not equal to, and we're taking our argument and we're turning it into an integer, because as you can see right now, it's just a string. So we need to turn it into an integer, because I can show you a way to explain this. Because this I right now is 0, is not equal to 5. That wouldn't make sense, right? You can't check if an integer is not equal to a string. So we have to turn it into an integer. And then what we're doing is we're beeping, and we're just beeping. We're increasing I every time we beep. And then when I is equal to how many times we want to beep, then we stop. And else, so if the arguments are not equal to 0 and they're not equal to 1, then what we're going to do is return invalid arguments for beep. It requires either 0 or 1 argument. And there you go. This is done. Oh, and just return that right there. Just to make sure all code paths return a value. So if this was the case, it would return something. If this was the case, it would return something. And if neither of those are the case, then it's going to return this. That way, it'll always return a string. Otherwise, it would get mad at me and say not all code paths return a value, as you can see right there. So now that we've made our first basic command, we go into the command handler, and this is how easy it is to implement it. This.commands.add new beep, and then in here we write what the command name should be. Beep. Now I'm going to go back over here, and as you can see, whenever we got, what's the word I'm looking for? Whenever we got a packet, we would just write it into the console. But now what we can do, instead of that, we can write, let me just make our command handler, private static command handler, or we need an import. So using, I made my thing clients, you made it whatever you did, .commands. And command handler ch, and then up here I'm going to say ch is a new command handler. And now down here I'm going to write ch.run command instead of console.writeLine. So I'm going to go ahead and build this. Okay, I forgot to do something. So it's do.toArray right there. Because this actually doesn't return array. It returns an enumerable string, but we can easily convert that to an array like that. Build, not all code paths return a value. Return command plus cmd does not exist. So if you couldn't find the command, then just return that the command doesn't exist. I'll go and test this right here. I don't know if you heard that. Here, I'm gonna do this just so I can. So I'm just making this a loop, so we can just keep sending commands. So I don't know if you guys can hear this, but look at my system sound. Beeps. Try beep 10. Yep, that was 10. I counted it. And now what we'll do is we'll write the response. We can actually even leave this open, just so I can show you guys how this. I mean, at least to me, this is pretty cool. How I can leave this open and just update the other one, and it'll do different things. See if I put the same input. But I'll go to my program, and we're gonna say console write line. CH start running command, and actually I do have to end it right there just so I could build this. But anyway. Anyway, you guys saw I didn't change this at all. So beep. It's not gonna write anything. But what if I do beep 3G? Invalid arguments for beep. What if I do this? Command does not exist. Yeah. And I'm gonna do one more command quickly. I'm gonna call this command get name. And I'm making this a command just an example, so you can like get information about the system. So we're just gonna inherit command public void or oops, public get name. What is that? Public get name base name, just as we did in beep. It's the same thing. Same thing for every command. Okay, so for this one, when I'm getting the name, you don't need any arguments. So if args.length is not 0, then return invalid arguments for get name expected 0. And if the arguments are 0, then return environment.username. And this is just going to get my username, which is elite. And we'll add in the command here. Remember to make it lowercase, unless you have to make it lowercase unless you change this to lower. Or if you want it to be case sensitive, you can get rid of that. Remember to change that. and this doesn't have to be the name of the class. I'll even demonstrate that. It could just be a name. Build this. Name, elite, name, and then you're putting arguments, invalid arguments for get name expected to. So, yeah, that's it for today's episode, guys. I hope you enjoy. So, I'll see you guys in episode 3.